So this Shabbat is parashat Vayishlach, and I'm not sure what Lila's going to say tomorrow morning at her service at the Bat Mitzvah, but Vayishlach means and he sent. Who's he and what did he send? Yaakov sent messengers to his brother Esav. Malachim, they're referred to in the Torah. Malach is a messenger, but also is understood to be perhaps divine messengers, an angel. He sends messengers to Esav. Why? Because he wants to see what Esav's mood is. Last week we read how Yaakov had to flee from the land of Israel because he had cheated his brother in the previous week, cheated his brother of the birthright, and got the blessing from his blind father Yitzchak, posing as his brother Esav. When Esav comes back from the field with the game which his father had asked him to hunt, prepared the meat in the dish that his father enjoyed, serves it to his father, and says, "Bless me." And the father says, "Well, who are you? Because I already blessed one of my sons. I blessed my older son Esav." And Esav realizes that he's been tricked, that Yaakov has stolen the birthright. And if you read the final passage of the parashah, it's quite heartbreaking how Esav weeps and says, "Bless me to my father, don't you have a blessing for me as well?" And so, of course, he's angry now and upset with his brother. Twice his brother has duped him. His brother's named Yaakov because he was the one that held onto the heel of Esav when they were born. When Esav was born, he was his twin, unlike twin, very dissimilar twin, but he's holding onto his heel to try to pull him back so he could be the firstborn. So Yaakov, from the word for heel or ankle, Yaakov was a usurper. He was always trying to overtake his brother and trick his brother. Yaakov is portrayed as an intelligent man, a pure man, a dweller in the tents, while his brother Esav is portrayed in the Torah and rabbinic literature as this uncouth, wild man who liked to hunt, very dissimilar. So Yaakov flees because he flees for his life, and also he's sent by his parents to find a wife back in Mesopotamia, in Dehaim, as they'd say in Yiddish, in the home country. They don't want him to marry any local Canaanite woman. And we read last week of how he arrives at the house of his mother's brother Lavan, his uncle Lavan, after having this dream before leaving the land of Israel of the ladder, and God promising to look after Yaakov and bring him back to the land, and that his children, his descendants, will inherit the land of Israel. He meets Rachel, whom he falls in love with. That, of course, ends up marrying the older sister Leah first. He has to work another 7 years for his father-in-law to remarry Rachel. He gets 2 concubines in the deal as well because Bilhah and Zilpah are given to him. And he has, when I asked the other day, how many children did Yaakov have? They said the answer was 12, which is wrong because he had 13 children. People always forget about the daughter Dinah. Poor Dinah was raped and forgotten about. So he had 13 children, but he comes back. It's time to leave, and he comes back to the land of Canaan, and he has to reconcile with his brother Esav. So he's not quite sure how Esav feels about him after all these years of being away. So he sends 2 messengers to go and find and tell Esav that he, Yaakov, is coming to greet him, just to feel out the temperature, see if he's safe or if he's still in danger from Esav's wrath. And the messengers come back to Yaakov and tell him that we've seen Esav coming with armed men to greet you. So Yaakov, knowing that he had wronged Esav, thinks the worst and thinks that Esav is still out to kill him. So he decides to placate him with gifts. He takes his camp, he divides his camp into 2. The first contingent contains many wealth and many animals, livestock, but not his family. Sends him across the river Jordan, and then a bit later sends the second half of the camp that contain his children, his wives, and his concubines. figuring that if Esau is still angry with Yaakov, he'll attack the first camp, the first half of the camp. His anger will be sated, and he wouldn't then threaten the lives of his children and wives. But he decides before he can meet Esau, he has to spend some time alone. So he sends them across, and he goes back to the eastern side of the Jordan to meditate, to think, to process what he's about to do, reconcile with his brother, maybe get some courage. And he's visited by this mysterious being. The Torah calls him a man. Prophet Hosea refers to him as a malach, as an angel. Many of the medieval rabbis believe that this being was either Esau's guardian angel or Yaakov's own conscience. And there's a wrestling match that takes place, according to the Torah. Yaakov wrestles with this man. During the match, the wrestling fight, Yaakov is injured in his thigh. Dawn approaches. Yaakov has got this man in a stranglehold, and the man says, "Release me, because dawn is breaking." It clearly might be an indication that this wasn't just an ordinary man, this was some being who wanted to leave before the day broke. And so Yaakov says, well, makes a deal, because Yaakov is this man who makes deals. He made a deal with his brother, said, I'll give you this lentil soup if you give me the birthright. So he says to this man, or this being, before I free you, give me a blessing. And this being says, the blessing will be a name change. No longer will be Yaakov, the man who grabbed onto the heel of his brother to try and usurp him. He'll be known as Israel. Many meanings to the word Israel, but the etymology given by the Torah itself, this week's Torah portion, is that you are a person who strives, who fights with the divine. A man who doesn't just accept the status quo, a man who struggles. He struggled with an angel, struggles with God, and so he's called Israel. Of course, Israel is what we are called, Bnei Israel, the children of Israel. And a Jew is a person who fights for justice, who tries to reconcile with people, with the enemy, and try to find a peaceful way forward if possible. Unfortunately, it's not always possible. So he becomes Israel. But because of this injury in the fight, he has a limp. And he approaches his brother Esau. Esau sees him coming. His younger brother by a few minutes, his younger brother coming, and something's changed about this brother. He's limping. The Torah says specifically that he bows 7 times onto the ground before reaching Esau, his older brother, by a few minutes. And he refers to him as my Lord, and refers to himself as your servant. He's showing humility. Yaakov understands after this wrestling match with this angel or this man or his conscience or the guardian angel of Esau, whichever you understand that to be interpretation you prefer. In wrestling with this, he's wrestling with himself, and he understands that he wronged his brother, that his brother had a reason to be angry and even hateful towards him. And so he makes sure that he prostrates himself and shows that he's a changed man. And the Torah says, "V'yaratz Esav likrato, v'chabekhu v'yipol al tzvarav v'yishakehu v'yivku." Esau ran to greet him, to greet Yaakov, embraced him, and falling on his neck, he kissed him, and they wept. Reconciliation took place. But interesting, if you read the Torah scroll, it might even be in the Chumash, the word V'yishkehu, and he kissed him, has diacritical marks, dots on top of each of the letters. And it has to be written that way, because if it's not written like that, then the Torah scroll is invalid. It's not a kosher Torah scroll. So those marks are there for a reason. A reason to draw attention to that word, V'yishkehu, and try and understand what actually happened when the brothers kissed. When Esau kissed his brother on his neck. So there's no answer given by the Torah, but we turn to the Midrash, because Midrash often has answers that you're looking for. So on this verse in the Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah, there's of course a difference of opinion, because that's what we do. We as Jews have difference of opinion. And the beauty of Judaism and rabbinic literature is all opinions are recorded, because all opinions are valid. So Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar teaches that if you come across a word in the Torah and there are marks on top of it, little dots on top of the letters, if there are more letters than dots, then you interpret the word one way. If there are more dots than letters, interpret the word the other way. But in this particular case, Vayishkehu, and he kissed him, each letter has a dot. So the equal amount of letters and dots. And therefore, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says that at this moment when the two brothers meet after so many years, and there's this feeling of hatred from Esav towards his younger brother Yaakov, and a feeling of fear of Yaakov towards Esav, they meet. Esav sees how Yaakov has changed, he's now Yisrael. He's humble. He understands that he's wronged his older brother. And so at this time, when they meet, Esav is filled with compassion. And he embraces his brother and kisses him wholeheartedly with all his heart. And that's the interpretation of Shimon ben Elazar. But Rabbi Yonai has a different opinion. He says, no. The dots are there to indicate that he did not kiss his brother, but he bit his brother on the neck. And according to Rabbi Yonai's imagination, as he was going to bite his brother on the neck, God weakened his teeth. And Yaakov's neck changed to marble, hard. And so when Esau bit, it says afterwards they embraced and bit him and then, or kissed him, and then they wept. Not because of emotion or forgiveness, but rather according to Rabbi Yonai, because Esau wept for his teeth were sore. And Yaakov wept for his neck because his neck had turned to marble. The point is that there are two differences of opinion between Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar and Rabbi Yonai. How they perceive the world, how they perceive people in the world, how they perceived Esav. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar gave Esav the benefit of the doubt. He said, although Esav is vilified, is an uncouth man, a hunter who didn't really care for his birthright, and he sees how Yaakov has changed, his heart is filled with compassion, and he embraces and kisses his brother with all his heart. He looks at humanity and human beings in a more positive light, gives them the benefit of the doubt, no matter how naughty they are, how unwell they've behaved, how bad they are. There's a spark of goodness in each and every one of us. As Rabbi Yonai has the opposite view. He's rather cynical and believes that the Torah is written with those dots on that word, and he kissed him to indicate that actually Esav had never forgiven his brother, could not forgive his brother, and therefore he bit him. We're living now in a very polarized world, where people have different opinions, extreme opinions on either side of the spectrum. And often we don't listen to each other, don't allow for difference of opinions, we don't give each other the benefit of the doubt and say, well, essentially, they're a good person, let's try and listen to their argument. And maybe we can meet halfway, just as Esav and Yaakov met halfway. After they embraced and kissed, Esav says, come settle with me. And Yaakov says, no, I think you go your way, I'll follow a bit behind you because I've got many children and women in my camp and they're weak. But he had no intention of following his brother and he went a separate way. Sometimes We need to find a compromise, but go our separate ways. And in the world around us, there are many who don't want to listen to the other side and vilify the other side. So we need to be like Esav, in the interpretation of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and understand that there's good in each and every one of us. Even sometimes if it's hard to find, we need to find that goodness. Based on the principle that everybody is inherently good. Every morning you say the blessing, Elohana Shemash Satabi Torahi, the God that His soul you have given me is pure. You're born with pure souls. Yes, sometimes we make mistakes, sometimes we go along the wrong path and we become wicked or evil, but essentially we are born with a good soul, and there's always a way back to being a good person. So when Shimon ben Elazar says that Esav really embraced his brother and took pity on his brother and kissed him with all his heart, he's highlighting the goodness that we all carry within us. And sometimes you need to help the other understand that they have goodness in them, even if they're filled with hatred. It's a very difficult job to do, but perhaps that is why we have to work so hard, especially in the world we're living in now. So let us always look for the good in the other and not be cynical, although it's sometimes very difficult to do. Can you hear that song? Amen.